quite a sensitive debate, actually, isn't it? Because there are a number of people we've discussed already this morning, you know, while this is going on, it might seem even tactless to discuss playing football. But why do you think it's important to focus on the possibility of getting the season concluded?
Well, I think it's important, Susanna, and first and foremost, I think that any return to playing football, you know, should be only with the full support of the government and the medical advice and the scientific evidence. So, you know, if that is then the plan, then if the season can be concluded, whenever that may be, I don't know why we are setting deadlines. You know, it gives, as you've alluded to, it gives the nation hope. We know how important football is to people. But only can be concluded if it's safe to do so. You know, it goes as far as, you know, my son, Suzanne, I'm well aware of the risks involved. You know, my son's a first-year scholar at Manchester United, and, you know, he's desperate to go back and play. But, you know, as a father of a son whose dream is to be a footballer, you know, if the medical advice isn't safe, you know, I would suggest to him that he doesn't go back.
And, of course, we're talking about a situation where it's suggested you wouldn't be playing in front of spectators. These would be games probably played behind closed doors. There would be enormous protection for the players, testing, social distancing. And as you suggest, I think the idea is if you could do it safely, no one is suggesting that you wouldn't do it in the safest way possible. But there is an argument, isn't there, that overall it might be good for the nation to have something positive to talk about.
Well, last night on my radio show, as Piers know, I do a radio show 606, and that was brought back last night. And the overwhelming and overriding thing that people were talking about was that, you know, they would like to see football back only when it's safe to do so. So there is a, you know, willingness for football supporters out there. You know, I know Piers is a huge Arsenal fan, and, you know, he thinks the season should be cancelled, and I wouldn't argue with that if it's not safe to do so. That was 100%.
Well, my question, Robbie, about it really, my thing about voiding the season is I've been really wrestling with this, like everybody, about how the season can't be completed. I don't think there's a cat and hell's chance, by the way, there'll be any football being played for months and months and months. I even think next season is going to be at risk because of the duration of this virus and the lack of vaccine and so on. However, I just think that if you look at it and you're trying to work out a fair way to end this season, if it has to end, I don't know any fairer way than just almost pretending it didn't happen. There are still 8 games to go in the Premier League. Liverpool obviously are runaway favourites to win it, and they're the moral winners. But there are so many, like relegation, for example, can make a seismic difference to a club.
As promotion can.
As can promotion. It can determine their financial ability to perform at the highest level. It can affect everything. But how can you take away 8 games and just say we're going to end it now and leave it as it is? If, say, one relegation team still hasn't played 3 or 4 of the top teams and the other one has. I mean, it's just unfair to me. So I've reached the conclusion, very sadly, and I feel particularly sorry for people like Liverpool fans, Leeds United fans who were hoping to be promoted, that the only fair, genuinely fair way is to void it altogether.
You know, that has happened, hasn't it, in tiers 3 to 7, Piers, that all the results of those low leagues have been expunged. And I've spoken to lots of players involved in those levels, and you know that the emotions, the anger of, you know, for instance, Vauxhall Motors, who had won promotion already, but their season's been null and void. So, you know, you try telling those people who go to work every day, you know, and play football at that level where they've given all their time and their results have been expunged, and that's at that level. So if you were to null and void the season and expunge all results, you know, I don't think that's a fair way. I think a points per game system. You've mentioned there France. You know, the government took the decision to, you know, void all football until September the 1st. And if the Premier League were to follow suit, you know, a points per game system would be in place, because in France, you know, even though they haven't announced PSG as champions, they're undecided on that. They've said there will be, you know, relegation where the table stands. European players.
All right, let me bring in John Hartson here. John, you have a particular... You're a top footballer, international player. You love football as much as we all do. We all love football here, and we're all missing it. We'd all love to think it could start again. Of course, it would be a huge morale boost. But there's a harsh reality check, and you don't need, of all people, to be told about the importance of the health system in this country. It saved your life.
Absolutely. I have an awful lot of gratitude to the NHS for what they did for me during my 6-week stint in hospital 10 years ago, obviously with the testicular cancer that spread to my lungs and onto my brain. But I think as well, we've spoken about null and voiding and stopping the football this season, almost stop it right away. But I do think as well, there's a lot of people out there that do want to see a resumption of the Premier League and the Scottish Premiership. But we have to make sure, the government takes every measure available before we can get underway. There's still so many grey areas. There's so many grey areas. We are still, social distancing. It's impossible to social distance on a football pitch. And also, we're talking about testing the players twice a week. But it's not just the players. If you're going to put a game on, even behind closed doors, you've still got key workers, you've still got physiotherapists, you've still got substitutions, the referees, you've got the police, you've got the cameramen, the media. And, to get underway and to get a resumption, it still seems as if...
I also think you'd have crowds of people gathering somewhere. They would all want to watch it with their mates. And so
unless you make sure that everybody can watch it on TV, you disincentivise
but my point is,
going to the stadium.
I still think football fans, if they know their game is on and they can't go to the game with their friends, they're going to break the lockdown. They're going to all meet up.
OK, but I think... sorry, John, carry on.
Season 2021, generally will start in August. So we're at the end of May now. The players will probably, out of this meeting, if they are thinking of a resumption, they'll probably say, well, players start coming in and getting going at the beginning of June, which is, at the end of June. And then how far, there's 8 or 9 games to go. It'll probably take 6 weeks to get through them games. And then all of a sudden, how much break do they get at the end of July? They need a little bit of a rest period because they'll be fit. The players are still training now. They'll be given their personal... their own fitness regime.
They aren't going to be match fit. And Robbie, you know how finely tuned footballers are as athletes. They haven't been playing matches now for a long time. When you come back from a layoff, you have to be very careful with players, any kind of layoff, because their bodies simply aren't up to match fitness.
They've been training. Lots of players.
They've been training, but not, I suspect, at the same level. And what would worry me if I was a player, you suddenly come back and you're told to play 4 games a week for a few weeks to get the season finished and then go straight into another season. And I don't even think, by the way, that this will be possible. And then that next season backs into the Euros, which have now been moved to next summer and so on. I could see a lot of problems for players with injuries.